And the hottest team in the NBA are your Philadelphia 76ers, having won 6 in a row with a chance to go 8-0 to close out the season with their final 2 games against Orlando on Friday, Brooklyn on Sunday. And let the party begin. Well, our party is here for right now on this Tuesday. It's Wednesday. Sorry, here on this PHLY.
We're still working on our
Sixers
days of the week.
podcast.
Next week we'll get into counting from 1 to 100. You know,
Yes.
we're making our way through the
We'll get
kindergarten curriculum.
We'll get there. Hey, man, Monday's off and things like that.
I hear you, buddy.
It's Tuesday for us. Derek Bodner, Kyle Neubeck, Devon Givens here. Brianna producing, all of you with us here on this Wednesday in the chat. We can't wait to talk with you all after another good win for the Sixers, simply because they needed a W. Needed some help from Atlanta last night. Did not get that. Double overtime. We discussed it while we were in the show. But it also has us looking at what else needs to happen in the rest of these games here, not just with the Sixers, but around the association in the Eastern Conference, and how things play out with the possible opponents overall. We'll get into Joel Embiid. We'll talk about the Giannis situation with Milwaukee, a little bit of an update there. We'll get into it all here on this Wednesday. But Kyle, starting with you, man, how you doing? And what are you looking at here with this basketball
Well, number
team?
one, I'd be doing a lot better if I hadn't spent so much time watching DeJounte Murray in the fourth quarter and 2 overtimes in the locker room last night, because boy, oh boy, was that offense tragic. It was just a whole lot of him dribbling side to side and taking pull-up mid-range jumpers. And in the back of my head, I was like, all that time we spent talking about DeJounte Murray, maybe they were right not to trade for that guy. So that's the first place my mind goes. The second thing is just that this is a crazy playoff picture, right? The Sixers, in theory, this is not very likely, but in theory can be anywhere from what? 4th
to
8th, and wide range of outcomes. They have one of the most important Eastern Conference games on the schedule that is left between them and Orlando. The Magic, who I think we had put out of sight, out of mind for a while, have now gone from, hey, they look like a pretty comfortable, they're going to be sitting in 4, to the Sixers might pass them at the end of the season and jump out of the play-in tournament. And so there's so many moving parts, right? Like, so for example, Giannis Antetokounmpo gets hurt last night, leaves their game, and potentially, depending on the severity of the injury, depending on how long he has to stay out, that could be a boon for whoever plays them in the first round of the playoffs. For the Sixers, it's unfortunate timing because they could use some help from Milwaukee tonight. Milwaukee beating Orlando either tonight or in the season finale on Sunday will give the Sixers a much needed win against Orlando to help them climb out of the play-in tournament. So we're going to just be sitting here. I'm going to be like, what's his name? Zach Galifianakis in the Hangover when they're playing blackjack and he's got all the numbers floating around his head. That's going to be me with playoff scenarios over the next 3-4 days. I think where I'm at, and it's why I think we ended up with the thumbnail text that we did, I just think you want to avoid the Celtics as long as possible. And I know there's some people in the chat online and elsewhere who believe they just get, if you're going to have to go through them, you might as well do it early while Joel is semi-healthy. I am not of that mindset. I think you just hope that somebody else beats them.
My counter to that is, so like if you're saying I don't trust Joel to be healthy in the Eastern Conference Finals, who do you think you're beating in the Eastern Conference Finals without Joel Embiid?
Yeah.
So I understand the sentiment, because if Joe goes down, obviously you have no chance against Boston. And Joe going down is probably more likely than anything happening to the Celtics. But if you say the Sixers have a 20% chance of beating the Celtics in round 1 without Joel Embiid, or with Joel Embiid, the question then becomes, is there a 20% chance of another team beating Boston or an injury to Boston changing them? I think you probably want to wait to play them as long as possible, because upsets do happen. The top seed in the conference, the best team in the conference, doesn't always make the conference finals. I think you want to give as much time for it to play out as possible. I do think you want to make sure that you get a little bit of, and quite frankly, as good as they've looked, they haven't really been playing playoff caliber opponents right now.
No.
You want to give them time to get back into a rhythm so that if they're healthy in the Eastern Conference Finals, they have a real chance. I do think you want to avoid them.
Always want to avoid Boston. The one thing that you can look back on, of course, it's a different team than it was last season where you have Drew Holiday now in the mix, previously with the Milwaukee Bucks, now with the Boston Celtics, and they're a different type of team. They have a huge lead right now, folks, over the rest of everybody else in the Eastern Conference by 14 games. It's not even close. So even when Milwaukee, for them, beats them the other night, didn't matter. It was what it was. They beat them, but they have a big enough cushion where they're not afraid of anybody. But Drew Holiday makes the team that much different. So when you go back to, if you're a Sixer fan and you say, well, guys, what are you talking about avoiding them? You played them to a Game 7 last season in the second round, also having a 3-2 lead while winning 2 on their home floor. Why are you afraid of them now? Well, I guess the answer would be just simply because of the Porzingis and Drew Holiday additions from what the team was a season ago and how much of a machine they have seemed to be this year. Now, the Sixers did beat them in the first game. Since then, they have not beaten them. They did play them well when I believe it was Maxey and Embiid, or one of the two were out. Patrick Beverley went nuts in that game in Boston, and they almost beat them in that primetime game. And that was that the other night that we were at the Chegg when they were playing the Boston Celtics, and that was the same one. Okay, so
no,
they did play Boston when we were at Chegg.
It was a different. The one you're referring to with Pat Bev was in, I want to say December.
That was December, but they played them close. Yes. And both of those games. Now, Joel Embiid wasn't there for the second one when Patrick Beverley was going off, but you do want to avoid the Boston Celtics until you can't any longer. That said, I'm sure we'll talk ourselves into certain matchups if and when they do get there to face them in the Eastern Conference Finals, which it most likely would be in this scenario. But for right now, looking at the draw and where they are right now, with the chance of moving all the way up to 4, falling all the way to 8th, but the way that they have been playing, of course, we think that they have a really good chance against not only Brooklyn on Sunday, but Orlando on Friday, that this team could be very dangerous going in. And with that, you avoid Boston, sure, but the draw for everyone else, Derek, from New York to, depending on what Orlando does, Cleveland, Indiana, are you really that worried about any of those people as you, of course, focus on the Boston Celtics later on?
No, you're not worried about anyone in the East outside of Boston. You really aren't. And the only other team that was playing, or that you would conceptually be worried about, Milwaukee has A, been a 500 team for quite a while now, and B, they have a little bit of an injury concern here with their star player.
Are coached by Doc Rivers.
Are coached by Doc Rivers, yes. So no, I don't think you're really worried about anyone. Kyle brought it up, but the Giannis news. So he had a calf strain in last night's game. The MRI came back with his Achilles is fine, or at least intact, is the way it was phrased by Woj. That's good news in the long term for Milwaukee, which if you meet them in the first round, that comes into play. But you wonder how cautious they're going to be over the next, the rest of the regular season. That's important for the Sixers because Milwaukee plays Orlando twice. You need Orlando to lose one game in addition to the one they play against the Sixers, so you need them to lose 2 of 3. If Milwaukee is going to rest Giannis, that would impact that, so we'll see how that plays out. But no, you're not worried about anyone. I mean, Cleveland's not playing great basketball. New York has their own injury concerns, including Randall being out.
And OG Anunoby is back, but
Miami
he can't stay in the lineup.
Just can't score. When they played down the stretch the other night, their only real offense was bank threes and bullshit from Jimmy, and that's it. You should be able to shut that team down. And the Hawks and all that, they stink. You don't have to talk about them.
Trae Young's coming back.
Sure, that's fine. I think that 9-10 game will be lit. No, there's nobody in the East outside of Boston that you're scared of, really at all. I might go as far as to say I would make the Sixers a favorite over, probably still if Giannis is playing, you make the Bucks favorite. Outside of that, Sixers might be favored in almost every series.
Yeah, I would say if any of the other teams concern me, it would still probably be the Knicks, even with the Randall injury. One, because I think Randall has historically kind of struggled in the playoffs, and you could argue you just throw more wings or true wings out there instead of a forward, and maybe that ends up working out better. Now, that does hinge on, to your point, Devon, Anunoby being actually healthy, and that is always kind of up in the air with him. That's been one of the big problems for him historically, especially in the playoffs. Some of their big runs in Toronto, he was not able to go for. So we'll see on that. But I think the Knicks, at least stylistically, are a team that can give a lot of teams problems. They're a tough defensive team. They got the head of the snake in Brunson. Although Mitchell Robinson is only recently coming back to the lineup, he's at least somebody with the size to bother Joel Embiid. He's not going to make him work too hard on the other end of the floor other than the rebounding component. But I do think that amongst those other teams, he's one of the few guys that can stand up and battle with Joel in the post and whatnot. So that'll help them staying home on shooters, not having to send as many hard doubles. I think the rest of the matchups are more, there are some stylistic quirks you don't love, but I think the Sixers are either the more talented team or just have the best player. Like, would you love playing a team like Indiana in the playoffs? Now that's probably a round 2 if they can both get out type of scenario anyway, but that's more of just make sure you don't let them play on their terms, and I think you're fine. I'm absolutely not fearful of Cleveland. I think their playoff showing last year, the Sixers playing them well and just beating them outright without Joel Embiid, let alone with him, I have plenty of confidence they can beat them in a series. And then Orlando, because we're talking about, it's so weird. We're talking about the potential for the Sixers to pass them, and yet they're still in a position where if they win out, then they could end up being a first round, potential second round opponent. I just think they're too young. Like I think they have a lot of good talent. I don't believe that much in their guards, especially in the playoffs. I do still think they're probably 1 or 2 pieces away and, 1 or 2 years of experience and playoff failures away. So once you get past Boston, I just think there are flaws in all of these teams. Flaws, injury concerns, coaching advantages that the Sixers have. Like, that's another thing. I think Nick Nurse will be the best coach in the series in quite a few of these potential matchups anyway. And so I just think if you avoid Boston, maybe they're not favored outright in a Milwaukee series, but it's a coin flip close, to me. And the rest of them, I'd take the Sixers outright and wouldn't have to think too hard about it.
I mean, outside of Miami, they might have the coaching advantage in every one. That's really the only one you would say the other team definitely does.
And I'm with you on the Knicks, the Jalen Brunson factor. If we are also going to give the credit to the other star players in playoff series like Joel Embiid, or Joel Embiid is going to be the best player on the floor in pretty much all of them outside of looking at the Giannis piece, depending on where you have them ranked, of course. But Jalen is that good. Jalen Brunson has been that good. Yeah. And with him being that good, he has also done it in the postseason, not only with the Knicks, but with Dallas, where he has shown that he
not his first time in the playoffs.
And of course, you can take it back to the collegiate days because you also factor in big moments playing in big games. That's not new to him, so that's not a problem with him. DiVincenzo, getting the addition of Mitchell Robinson back, the way that Hartenstein plays with them. Josh Hart wants every loose ball, every rebound that you better make sure you find a way to get to. They are someone in the 7-game series, of course, that you have to be worried about. Then you go to Milwaukee, and that's right there. That's just the Milwaukee Bucks. It's always been Boston, Milwaukee, and Philadelphia. Now you add in New York in there and see where the chips may fall. The other piece, I want 2 things on the Giannis thing and one other. I was talking to a buddy of mine, call him Akbar Johnson, and he has a family member in Milwaukee who's a season ticket holder. So I was talking to them, and they hate Damian Lillard in Milwaukee.
The vibes are pretty bad in Milwaukee.
Can I tell you what his name is? Lame Lillard in Milwaukee right now. I was dying laughing.
Did you see that workout video where he was just moving a ball like this for 10 minutes? Yeah. What's going on here?
And that's how they feel about him because, number one, they didn't want to get rid of Drew Holiday. Mm-hmm. As much as the offensive things bothered them at times, the defensive part and the cohesion that they had as a team,
they had a real identity.
You never questioned anything with them. They had a real identity. Now, with Damian Lillard, sure, he can score, but they have never seen him do it, number one, in the playoff situation. Yes, he got to the Western Conference Finals with Portland once, but here with this particular team, and then the up and down of Chris Middleton being in the lineup now, in and out of the lineup, they have their concerns. So they call him Lame Lillard. They hate the fact that Drew Holiday is not there, that Drew Holiday is helping to lead that Boston situation with everyone else and just is the ultimate teammate and doesn't worry about his points. He just goes out there, 6 points, but he goes out there and can dictate the entire game defensively because of what he does. So they can't stand that. And then the other piece, Derek, we were talking about it last night when we first saw the injury, and then we discussed it on the show that we were saying, all right, it's the calf. That's not a joke, man. If you go back to the Kevin Durant thing in 2021, that was it 2020? No, 2019 with the Toronto Raptors, 2020, whatever it was, 19. And when he tore his Achilles, he first hurt his calf. And he rushed back. And they were wondering, is he going to come back? Is his calf good enough? Well, when he came back, he tore his Achilles in the NBA Finals, and therefore the Toronto Raptors took things over, and they won the championship. Had Kevin Durant been healthy, I think most people looked at the Golden State Warriors of winning that one too. But it started with the calf, and directly being attached to it, of course, the Achilles then popped, and that's something that they cannot rush him back. They have to be really careful about bringing Giannis back and getting him out there on the floor too fast, too soon, because that could be something totally, totally different in a couple of weeks. And then you're looking at a whole off of next season for him if they're not really careful of bringing him back too soon. So that's just the one thing I wanted to bring up. That's like what did they say, 2 weeks? That's more like 2-3 weeks when it comes to Giannis and dealing with that calf injury. So if that's what they want to do, go for it.
Yeah,
but
well,
that's something they need to pay attention to.
And to that point, Devon, Derek has made this point on the show recently that Giannis has been the guy who's been the difference between, okay, they're a good team and they're bleeding points, right? Part of the reason you trade for Dame, one is to give Giannis a partner and pick and rolls and end game offense. And frankly, the thesis of the trade is based on things that haven't really shown up for Milwaukee in crunch time in those late game situations. So a lot of people in Milwaukee are still waiting for the reward they were promised for making that trade. So if you do have to get through this stretch without Giannis, I don't know how Milwaukee does it. Like, I don't know how they win a series against, set aside the Sixers component, I don't know how they beat anybody because Giannis is their most important guy on both ends by far. Like, he's driving success on both ends and nobody else is even that close. So it becomes a Dame Lillard team where they can't get stops, where Dame's offensive ceiling is not as high as it was even 1-2 years ago. He clearly has taken a bit of a step back, and that's always the worry with small guards, right? Like once you lose a little bit, you lose one step, a little bit of burst, you start dealing with injuries, it can go like that. And I'm not saying he's cooked. He still has pretty good averages for the year, but the difference between pretty good and elite is a meaningful difference. And so I think all eyes right now are on Giannis and the MRI that he's getting, and how long they have to deal with this problem and how long it is before they can say, we can, to your point, Devon, we can throw him back out there as the Bucks without subjecting him to like real severe risk and turning potentially a short-term problem into a long-term or even just postseason long problem.
And you brought it up, like without Giannis, we've seen even prime Lillard, what the sort of ceiling is on a Lillard-led team without someone like Giannis alongside of him. It's just not high enough, in large part because the defense is so bad that you cannot compete on that end. And yeah, I know Lopez is still there. He's not quite what he was, but everyone else around that is just tragic defensively. Like they just elevated Patrick Beverley to the starting lineup on a team that is completing for a championship. We saw Patrick Beverley.
Have there been many belt to ass tweets recently? Because I feel like probably not.
We saw Patrick Beverley. He was fun while he was here, a little less fun since he's left and keeps talking about it. But he should not, like, when you are that desperate for defense, there is a fundamental problem. And they have been trying to figure this out for a while now. If Giannis is not available or not at 100%, that is a huge problem. And they, to Kyle's point, they do not have nearly the same kind of upside, and they do not scare you at all.
You know who's got significant upside, especially around here? Our good friends at Olipop, who are coming to town with a new kind of soda. Guys, Olipop is available online and available in almost 30,000 retailers nationwide. Most importantly, for you lot around here, a recent launch at all Wawa stores. You can scoop a classic root beer or a strawberry vanilla at a Wawa near you. I've been a big soda drinker at times in my life. I've told you guys this many times. And Olipop allows me to get what I want from soda, the great taste, something to go with, whether it's a sandwich, a slice of pizza, whatever it might be. And Olipop, you can get all that without worrying about what it's doing to your body. Olipop is much, much lower in sugar than conventional sodas, with only 2 to 5 grams of sugar. They all come from natural sources, no added. Their vintage cola has just 2 grams of sugar compared to a regular Coca-Cola, which has 39 grams of sugar. That is a significant and impactful difference. And guys, with that, they have plenty of classic flavors that you're used to. Vintage cola, classic root beer, orange squeeze, classic grape, strawberry vanilla, cream soda, and cherry cola. We even have a few experimental flavors that are not for retail sale yet. So you'll have to keep an eye out for those when they eventually come. So guys, use the code PHLY20 for 20% off of your next Olipop order. The discount only applies to one-time orders, not subscriptions. Olipop is sold online at drinkolipop.com and on Amazon, and it's available in almost 30,000 retailers nationwide, including Wawa, Target, Sprouts, Wegmans, ShopRite, and Go Puff.
Jay said, y'all got me drinking Olipop. I'm addicted.
Let's
LOL.
go. That's right, Jay.
Jay, Winona.
I got Winona and Jay. That's at least 2 people.
There was another one I can't remember from the other night, but yes, people are on the Olipop.
Oh, Chris B says, I got a variety pack on the way.
Nice.
Of Olipop. Well, let me see if I can sell you guys on another beverage. Maybe a little more well-known beverage, a little more established.
Olipop in the afternoon, this one at night.
Yeah, look, you have a nice, refreshing Olipop while you're on your lunch break, while you're sitting, talking to your significant other, dealing with your kids during the day. And after you deal with all the day-to-day stresses and all the annoyances, you can choose a chiller way by reaching for an ice-cold Coors Light. You guys know by now, you know you're getting an ice-cold Coors Light because those mountains turn blue on the bottles and cans when they hit that perfect temperature. Guys, there is a stressful part of the year for Sixers fans coming up. Potential play-in game, potential playoff games. Everyone's screaming at the TV, yelling at the officials, tearing their hair out, yelling at their loved ones, potentially taking their stress out on the wrong things. You have the option always to choose chill. You can go into your refrigerator, saddle on up to the bar, head to a distributor and say, I'd like to choose chill with an ice cold Coors Light. Coors Light is cold layered, cold filtered, cold packaged for a smooth finish. It is mountain cold refreshment. We might not have to see the good people or the bad people from the state of Colorado, depending on how the playoffs play out. But I know if we go there, I can always choose chill with an ice cold Coors Light. So when you choose to rise above it all, choose Coors Light and choose chill. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door with Instacart by going to CoorsLight.com/PHLY basketball. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. I could use an afternoon beer today, honestly.
That's how it goes. You can?
Yeah. Right. It's the weather's getting nice out, you know. It's nice refreshing beer on it's not hot, but a nice warm day at least. When it gets hot, I'm definitely going to be choosing chill a few days out of this summer.
And then you also chilling because they have won 6 games in a row.
Exactly.
You know, you watching the game tonight, Orlando, Milwaukee?
Sure.
You checking it out?
Yep.
Yeah, let's see what happens with that team. Then Lame Lillard is going to go out there and drop 41 in the game and win them. Thank you, Lame Lillard. We'll take that. We'll take it. But no, looking at this team right now, again, 10 games over 500. So when you do look at, and we've talked about not being afraid of anybody, we'll get to our super chats here in just a second. But when you're looking at them and you're not afraid of anybody, it really, in this one, Derek, now that we look at the standings, things can move so much. Are we still just looking at it as just get in the 6 and avoid the play-in? Or, hey, I'm not worried in the event that they have to play not as long, but it's much easier to have that 7-8 matchup on your home floor. Is there anything that you're looking at that's the best pathway for them?
Oh, I think I will never say I'm not worried about a play-in, A, because I worry about everything, but B, because not a single elimination game, but it almost is, because if you lose that, then the best case scenario is playing Celtics. Anything where you can lose one game and you're stuck playing the Celtics in the first round, that makes me terrified. Again, that's in part my personality. Worry about everything, panic about nothing. I fail on the second part, but I certainly succeed in the first half of that statement. But yeah, you would like to avoid that 7-8 play-in as much as you can. At the very least, you want to get that on your home floor, which again, in order to pass Miami has to lose one of their final 2 games and you have to win out. In order to pass Orlando has to lose one of those 2 Milwaukee games and you have to win out. So there's a lot that has to go on, not just the Sixers taking care of business, but they need some help from both of those teams along the way. But yeah, if you can get up to 6 and avoid that 7-8 play-in entirely, like I said, if you're in 7-8, you're 1 loss away from having to play the Boston in the first round. That's what you want to avoid.
And Kyle, looking at if you do get 6, whether it's New York, as much as we've talked about them, seeing them in the first round, possibly Cleveland, which you've already discussed, it not being afraid of them from their playoff performance from last season against New York, being knocked out in the first round, and then the Sixers playing them so well this season, and that's maybe your 3, 4, and mixed in there, and possibly Indiana maybe as a third team in that 3, 4, 5, whoever lands that 3 seed. You would have to feel pretty good, all things considered, from where we were to what we would be talking about going in.
I would also say with the Knicks, one of the advantages there is just it's a light travel series. And I think given that part of the ramp up to start the playoffs for the Sixers will be contingent on getting Joel Embiid up to 100% conditioning and going through his, not rehab is the wrong word, but going through his treatment and the things to get him up to full speed. I think basically only having to take a train or an extremely short flight. I don't know how lazy they are for the Sixers. Only having to do that short back and forth in between New York and Philadelphia, that'll work in their favor in some ways. Selfishly, even if this is not the best for the Sixers, I would also love a Sixers-Knicks series for, 1, the travel, but 2, the atmosphere.
Selfishly, we want to go up to MSG.
Madison Square Garden for a playoff game. Obviously, the Knicks fans will come here. Sixers fans will represent up in New York City. It is always a good time when those teams get together and when both teams are good, because rarely have they both been good at the same time over the last, few decades, I would say. So
our lifetimes, yeah.
Yeah, and our entire lifetimes is probably more accurate. So that I don't think that's the quote unquote best path. It's one that I would enjoy quite a bit, though. I do think this Giannis thing, because from what we've been hearing, he's at least going to miss the rest of the regular season, it looks like. So if it's serious enough that they're just writing off the final 3 games and saying, we don't care what happens, that suggests to me that he's going to be maybe not majorly compromised. He's going to be compromised in some way to start the playoffs. And that makes a matchup with the Bucks, which I was not super fearful of in the first place, even more enticing for the Sixers.
You know who that benefits? That gives Doc Rivers an excuse. He's already practicing his post-game
I was going to say, he
speeches.
never needs any excuse to make an excuse. We'll put it that way.
The Bucks have a 1-game lead over New York right now in that 2-3 spot there in the East. They have 2 games up on the Magic and Cleveland, and they play the Magic tonight and in that regular season finale on Sunday. So a lot could change. And I mentioned New York, Orlando, Cleveland, and Indiana. Well, yeah, Milwaukee falling and maybe into that 3 spot would be something if the Sixers were able to get that 6, because I think a lot of people would not be fearful of that.
Yeah.
And you might have an opportunity to miss Giannis altogether if he's not ready to go in that first round matchup.
And actually, Barbara in the chat made a good point. I'd try to get out of the play-in less games for Embiid. I don't think 1, potentially 2 games is that damaging, to say. The one caveat I would say with that, and it's why I wanted to bring Barbara into the show, is that if you play him, 40 minutes in one of these games, you're subjecting him to some real risk. And I get that he's going to have to get up to that type of ceiling in a playoff type environment.
Nope.
I don't know that you want it to be this soon and this sudden. And so that is part of the benefit of getting out of the play-in, is just giving him and the rest of the team, frankly, that whole week leading into round 1 to get right. And then you kind of gradually go up the scale from there.
I just want to say I am super excited to see Tyrese Maxey as an undisputed
Yeah,
number 2
man.
option.
I've been
and
saying
the undisputed, lead perimeter creator, because you always see young players come into their own as superstars in the league. They have that sort of like defined progression path. This is his chance to really make an imprint, and this is not his team, but this is very close. Like, he is very clearly the number 2. I just want to see what he is capable of, especially after watching what he did in that double overtime thriller. I cannot wait for what he has in store.
We have seen him, though, do this. He had 30 in that game 5 against Boston on the road. Embiid had 33. He had the first round matchup against Toronto. I remember he had 40 in one of those games to kind of get things started. So we have seen him kind of in that role, but absolutely, yeah, being the undisputed number 2 behind Joel Embiid, and sometimes being that number 1, depending on how things go in that particular game. We've seen him do it.
I'm not saying that we haven't seen him do it. I'm excited to see him in this role.
And Jay even says Maxey versus Brunson in the playoffs is much-watched TV. That would be a fantastic
100%.
matchup. Fantastic matchup. I don't know how much they'll actually guard one another, but
very little. If I had to guess.
And Kyle Lowry, step right up because you've got Jalen Brunson. But yeah, that would be fun to watch those two. And look, as we said, we may not have expected things to fall the way that they are falling, but sometimes pathways just create themselves the way that they do. Like the Atlanta situation, sure, they lost it, but man, Washington, Atlanta, and then go into Milwaukee in that one, they had a great path to get to the Eastern Conference Finals there.
Still smoked it.
Still smoked it. And here, we've talked about it. There's no, outside of Boston, there's no one that you're fearful of. And we've even discussed it where even, Tim Legler saying on the NBA show, Adam Mars, and us talking about it ourselves, the other teams are going to be more fearful because Joel Embiid is back
right
now. So it's different.
Noted big Joel Embiid fan, Adam Mars.
Tim said it. Tim Legler said it.
No, I know. He's a co-host.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. So, but yeah, they have to worry about Joel Embiid. That's the part that's there. All right, we got to talk about Embiid a little bit more and talk about a few more things, get to our super chats. But before we do, I have to tell you about our good friends. This episode is brought to you by Manscaped. Did you know 1 man every hour, every day is diagnosed with testicular cancer? In fact, testicular cancer is the most common form of cancer amongst men age 15 to 35. With April being National Testicular Cancer Awareness Month, our friends over at Manscaped have partnered with the Testicular Cancer Society to help spread awareness for men's health and early cancer detection. Visit manscaped.com/TCS to learn how to check yourself for early stages of cancer. And as always, you can use promo code, PHLY for 20% off plus free shipping at manscaped.com. And I want to take a second to talk about some of the men's health issues that are important to me, making sure that, sure, you may have a bum shoulder sometimes, you may have a knee or ankle injury that is troublesome, but these more important things, not that those aren't, are these types of situations here where you have to make sure that your health is good. So if you see something that is a little different than what you're accustomed to on your body, of course, you want to get those checked out, especially of course, down there in that area with your boys. With this in mind, you can perform simple routine self-checks at home while enjoying Manscaped products that you use every day, like the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. I have one. Of course, it's a great product. It makes sense, right? We use our products daily to trim and maintain our boys down there. The Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra features 2 interchangeable skin-safe blade heads, a standard one for taking a little bit off the top, and a new foil blade to go smooth and sleek. And you have the lighting, which is perfect. The spotlights, the LED spotlights, you achieve better visibility, making every trim more precise and hassle-free. So, of course, you got the light on. You need a little bit more. Get in there and find the right spots that you're looking at. Of course, the LED lights help you there. You can bring the trimmer wherever you want to go. It's a wireless charging capabilities and travel lock feature, and they have a nice little pouch for you to put all the pieces, the equipment of the Lawnmower Ultra 5.0 in the bag. In addition to providing the right tools and solutions for comfortable and easy grooming, Manscaped is committed to raising awareness and giving support for fighters, survivors, and families impacted by testicular cancer. That is why they will be donating $50,000 to the Testicular Cancer Society. Help save lives and balls by going over to manscaped.com/TCS and sharing their funny yet educational check yourself video. And while you're at it, grab 20% off plus the free shipping with code PHLY, because like a famous American philosopher once said, take care of your mentals, your balls, and your chickens.
We also want to make sure we
laugh, Derek.
We also want to make sure we tell you about Game Time. There very well may be a playoff game or a play-in game at the Wells Fargo Center here in the next week. That is one you will want to be at. And if you're there and you see us, who was it last night that saw us and didn't say anything? I forget. Someone in the chat mentioned they saw Kyle, Tim,
oh
and
yeah,
I,
you guys. They
and
saw
didn't
you
stop
guys.
by and say hi.
Yep.
If you do see us, buy tickets on Game Time. Come and see us. We'll be there. Anyway, buying tickets to your favorite event shouldn't be stressful. Game Time is a fast and easy way to buy tickets for all sports, music, comedy, and theater near you with killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee. You can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. There will be plenty of stress for a play-in game, not for buying tickets. Game Time is the place for last-minute ticket deals. Forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. And the Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. Find tickets in the same section and row for less. Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. It's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. With Game Time, you get images of your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive, and you can buy tickets in a matter of seconds. 2 taps and you're set, with tickets sent directly to your phone, so you never have to dig through your email. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code PHLY for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code PHLY for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
So on the subject of Game Time, we had a very astute tweet from Philly Mike, who pointed out to us right before we started the show. Said the play-in game is normally on Tuesday, the Tuesday leading into the playoffs. What happens if the Sixers host the play-in? Because the Flyers host the Capitals that night, and the Sixers do not control their own destiny in their current arena. I don't have a good answer to that. I don't know what they would do. I don't think that they would say you're playing at 1 p.m. on Tuesday.
The Sixers?
Yeah, I don't think you could do that. But I don't think the league would accept messing with the schedule. You can't have them play Wednesday, because then if you lose, you're playing, whoever loses is playing a back-to-back against the winner of the 9-10. So I don't know what the potential solution is there, other than punting the Flyers to the fucking moon because they stink. I don't know.
Flyers at 1 o'clock.
I think Flyers fans would be okay with that too. I think they're pretty much done with that squad.
Yeah,
it's wild.
What'd they lose, like 9-3 last night? Something like that?
What was it, 6-0?
We were sitting out there in the hallway watching the Sixers game. Bill walks by. We're like, hey, Bill, how's it going? He's like, what does that mean? He's like, 6-0. Whoa. That escalated quickly.
Somebody posted a screenshot of the Flyers Twitter where it was just like the whole feed was like, goal 1-0, goal 2-0, goal 3-0. We have changed goalies. Goal 4-0, goal 5-0. It was
they
so
changed
bad.
goalies at 5-0.
Yeah,
that's when they changed and took Airsign out.
I do want to bring up. I brought up a Young Property Group. We've spent so much time talking about the Bucks as a potential second round matchup, maybe the likely first round matchup. I mean, if they do if they do win the play-in. Bucks are only 1 game up on the Knicks.
Yeah.
And with the Bucks, if Giannis doesn't play, New York does have one tough game in Boston. Outside of that, they have the Nets and the Bulls.
Tough game on paper, I would say, because of the stuff we said, the motivation, the resting guys, like all that. New York could very easily take that. I wouldn't bat an eye if they
New
won
York
that game.
runs the table, they could end up being the 2 seed.
Yeah.
So that first round matchup could be against them.
I would say in either scenario, like if I was handicapping it, I would say I think the Bucks and Knicks will be 2-3 in some order. I think more than likely, unless you lose the first playing game, you're going to have to beat Milwaukee, New York in the first 2 rounds. And I don't think that's necessarily an easy path, but I don't think it's like I would take that over having to play Boston, period.
And Milwaukee does have that tiebreaker with the Knicks in a 2-team tie. So there's that too.
Okay.
I didn't know if you had some. Seemed like you're just chuckling at the Knicks over there.
We brought that up right before the break.
I'm just pointing it out. Shut up, Devon. Kyle, did you notice your face when you froze last night?
I did not.
Okay, you got to go back and rewatch it.
I'll never rewatch it.
Oh, we'll bring it up then.
Okay.
For the next show, we will have Bree bring it
listen,
up.
I've made lots of funny faces that have been turned into memes
it wasn't your fault.
over the years.
It just froze at like a perfect time. It was funny.
It's better than the one where I forget when it was from. I was like looking up at Joel and I smirked at something he said. And because he's so much taller than me, it's like, and I used to get that sent to me all the time by people on Twitter. So it happens.
All right. So Bill on the super chat says, so far, Luka and Kyrie not on the injury report. Giannis and Middleton are out. Dallas plays the Miami Heat tonight in Miami, second night of a back-to-back for the Miami Heat. They went in the double overtime, but Luka and Kyrie right now, as far as Bill is saying, are not on the injury report. All right, well, I mean, maybe Dallas can help out the Sixers here. Dallas still fighting for some seeding. Right now, they are 2 games back of the Clippers, 2 games in front of the Pelicans. They are in the 5 spot. Clippers 4, Pelicans 6. So Giannis and Middleton has been battling a lot of stuff. He got hit in his mouth or face the other day. So he's been dealing with that. And, of course, we know about the Giannis piece.
I don't mean to laugh at someone getting hurt, but I believe when it was the way it was phrased when he was ruled out was mouth trauma. And it was like the Archer thing. Like, does anyone care about phrasing anymore? Like mouth trauma? That's just, I'm going to leave it there, but it was a very funny way to describe what I'm sure was very painful for Chris Middleton.
Did he have his tooth knocked out in that one? I don't know. Might have his tooth knocked out in that one, but
I don't know what trauma constitutes mouth trauma.
Mouth trauma is so already listed out for tonight, along with Giannis against the Orlando Magic. Any thoughts on the Miami game with Luka and Kyrie in and seemingly right now double overtime last night for Miami?
Yeah, I mean, look, they've been playing pretty good ball, and if they have something to play for and they do with a little bit of seeding on the line, that's a game Miami could drop.
Dallas has won 4 in a row, by the way.
If it were a normal team, most people would just be like, oh yeah, that's an easy Dallas win, I think. Especially because Miami played double overtime and is on their own back-to-back tonight. Yep. But this is like the most classic Miami wins game of all time because they're just fucking stubborn and annoying. And so I assume that they somehow pulled this game out just to irritate everyone. And then we go into the final weekend of the season and it's like, watch out for the Miami Heat, even though they're not any.
And not only that, but their last 2 games are against Toronto at home. So they should be able to win those 2 if they have something to play for.
Yeah. So Miami should lose this game. The ones that they should lose, they almost never lose in my head. So I don't know. We'll see. They're just, I can't stand them. They every other year they go off in the playoffs. And so everyone gets tricked into like, watch out for them. They're better than they actually are. And then they fail in the playoffs and everyone pretends that it didn't happen. And we repeat the same cycle the next year.
Well, I mean, they have made the finals twice in the last 4 years.
Yeah,
so they deserve credit for that.
Yeah. They also deserve demerits when they lose in round 1 and get blown off the floor.
That's only happened once.
I guess.
As a team, or are we patting ourselves on the back because the Sixers make it out of the first round? Like,
that's what I mean. It's like they only get credit for the strengths of their program and they never take any heat, no pun intended, for when they suck. So it's a blessed life they live down there in Miami. Is all I'm saying.
All I'm saying is I would take their playoff track record. If you could swap that, if Joe could have 2 finals run and another conference finals run,
of course.
I would swap
I'm not saying I'd take the Sixers track record over them. I'm saying nobody fucking cares when they fail. It's like it just gets memory hold. Like oh, Pat Riley will figure a way out of it. And granted, he often does. Like he signs Hassan Whiteside and Dion Waiters to ridiculous contracts, and then poof, they just go up in smoke in the night. And it's just all very annoying to me.
Those 4 Tyrese Maxey games that you always bring up that he missed might be different for the Sixers right now.
They'd be a top 4 seed if he plays in those 4 games. Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely.
So that's a thing. Plug. All right. Thank you for your super chat here. Would you guys rather eat a shoe-flavored bagel? I'm guessing this is really
it might be
geared towards Derek.
Yeah.
Or a bagel-flavored shoe?
No, it's a shoe-flavored bagel every day of the week.
Yeah, because it's edible.
Yes.
That's the most important.
Yes.
Well, it's edible in the sense that you physically can eat it without dying.
My concern isn't that a shoe tastes like shit. That's not where my head is.
Plus,
at right
our
now.
friends at Bagels & Co., I bet you they would find an amazing cream cheese to pair with that shoe-flavored bagel, and you could make it a nice meal out of that. But a bagel-flavored shoe, you're fucked.
Yes.
Someone said to him last night that soft leather. Go with soft leather, Derek, for the shoe. Should you have to eat the shoe?
We'll see.
This is why I don't promise to eat things when I'm making. I'll just bet money. I'd rather lose money than have to eat some disgusting shit.
Elaine Bruno, why does Embiid's shooting motion start so low? He needs too much space to shoot, and when he's tired, he can't separate. Horford wins by sticking to him.
I mean, part of it is it's a foul drawing tactic,
Yes.
right? Like it's
And
it's
Elaine
a weapon
was
on
in the chat talking about that. He's like, well, but they don't call it in the playoffs as much. And he's right. They don't.
Yeah. And the rip through in general has been legislated a ton over the last, I don't know, few years or so. If you notice, Joel has gone to it quite a bit less this season, at least when he's been healthy enough to play. But that's part of it. There are disadvantages to doing it. I think that the Horford thing, I don't think comes down to just that, right?
No,
like there are a lot of other.
I also think, like he's saying, bring up Horford as one who's sort of figured it out and knows how to strip that without getting called for a foul. He's kind of like the only one. You don't see any other big men really poking the ball away from Joe during the shooting motion. But Horford's just turns into Superman when he plays Joe in the playoffs. It's weird.
And he comes off the bench now, so I wonder how that would go. Embiid doesn't really have that many problems with Porzingis. Of course, the length is there, but he does get the better of him.
He's had some success against the tall, skinny types. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I think they would probably switch the lineups around if I had to guess, because I think, to your point, he comes off the bench now, but I don't know that that's like
so you think Porzingis
no matter
coming
what
off the
type
bench?
of thing. They might go double big. Like that was how they beat the Sixers last year. Now, granted, it was a different version of the Sixers, different version of the Celtics, but I don't think it's crazy.
And the team is selfless, so if Derek White had to come off the bench, he might not complain about it.
Yeah.
He's not going to complain about it. He'll just do it, still play his 30 minutes and be fine with it and hit big shots and knock the Sixers out of the playoffs. And that's just how it goes, because that's how it happens.
The other thing to bring up about Embiid's shooting motion, he might just do it because it works. He's turned into one of the best shooters in the planet. Yeah. So like if that's the way he's comfortable and that's the way he gets into a rhythm, have at it.
All right. So, we got Orlando. Well, of course, Orlando coming up here on Friday. But looking at Kyle, with Embiid back, Tobias Harris back, DeAnthony Melton, having sat on it a little bit since you were in there last night and thought about it maybe a little bit more, you also look at the games, maybe not all of it, but check out some of the parts of the games when you're home after watching it. Anything else differently for you now that all right, Melton is back. This looks this way with him. Harris, the same thing. Of course, there are a lot of people yesterday talking about bringing Harris off the bench because you don't want to mess with what is working right now.
I would love for that to happen, but it's never going to happen.
Right. Yeah. So
I won't say never. I'd say it's unlikely to happen. But yeah. So to your point, I think the thing, maybe number one storyline for me heading into the playoffs is whether Joel can clean up the turnovers and the passing errors right now. Because I think everything else I've seen from him suggests he's at or close to the level he needs to be at. The conditioning's getting better. Jump shot has been there for stretches of games. I think defensively, he's been able to turn it up in the final 5-6 minutes of multiple games to help them win tight games over good teams. playoff teams. That part's good. I think he's shown that he can move, go out to the perimeter defensively, can show and hedge when he needs to from time to time, obviously not on a full-time basis. The one thing is that I think he has not dealt with pressure all that well yet. And that has been one of his big problems in the playoffs historically. Now, some of that has been down to how the offense was structured, right? Under Doc Rivers, they wanted to run the same things, have guys in the same places, and generally the theme was consistency with the spacing. PJ Tucker will be here.
Yep.
The off guard, most likely Tyrese Maxey will be here. Tobias Harris will be in this spot, and you always know where your reads will be. And that lent itself to when Joe's passing out of doubles, you're just going to get picked sometimes. And teams knew when to send doubles, where to send them from, especially Boston. Like Boston just haunted him. They've always been very good at timing and pressure and just kind of mixing it up enough to make him feel uncertain. And that's the one thing that I think has not been sharp basically at all. Even last night where he had, was it 8 assists, I think, and his passing was good, but there were still a lot of unforced errors and bad turnovers against, frankly, a dog shit Pistons team. And so what happens when you're in the playoffs, you're against a better defensive team, and they're allowed to get away with more contact? They're not going to be calling as many fouls. You're not going to be able to grift your way to the free throw line quite as much. Can you cut the turnovers down and keep the offense humming at a high level? That's question number one for me for the team and the playoff run at the moment. I think the good news is that Tyrese, as the lead ball handler, has been so protective of the ball while remaining as productive as he is that you can offset it a little bit with that. But I'd say that's my big worry as it stands right now. And it could just be Joel adjusts to the game speed. They're going to take advantage of more cutters and movement and what have you than in years past, but certainly a big storyline for me.
Yeah, I mean, that has to be it. We spent our entire writing career saying you need, in order for Six to be a contender, you need playoff Joe to match the regular season Joe.
Yeah.
That has to be it.
So when we talk about, because, yeah, it was just simply he's playing against Detroit, and he was like, screw it, I'm playing against Detroit. And I can mess around. We talked about that in game while we're watching it. It was just a classic case of this is Detroit, I'm going to screw around.
Yeah.
And he should have had that triple-double because we said it if he hadn't been messing around a little bit and made a couple of extra passes. But when you look at that, Derek, and you see, and of course we'll talk a lot about this once the playoffs actually get here, play in, first-round matchup, whatever situation that they're in. He's had so many playoff opportunities going to the second round as much as he has. Why do you think, of course, yes, their defense is different and they cause him problems and they make him think a little bit more. But as he has gotten older and older and older, we still get to games, though, where he still has high turnover games.
Sure. I mean, in part because Joe's a high turnover player. Like if he was turning the ball over but still being as efficient scoring as he was,
it wouldn't be a big deal.
Yeah, you wouldn't talk about it as much. It's a combination of the fact that he has been turnover prone and also his shooting percentage goes down by 6 or 7% or whatever it is in the second round of the playoffs. But yeah, defenses, look, when you get a world-class defense, which when we're talking about Boston, when we're talking about those types of teams, not second round team that came to mind was Atlanta. Well, shit, that's why that's the one that hurts so much.
Yep.
But when you talk about Boston in the second round, and you a world-class
fearsome defensive stopper, Danilo Gallinari.
Yeah, and all the switchable athletes they have, all the size they have, and the fact they have a chance to game plan for a 7-game series, it is much, much tougher. And you need Embiid to react better. Part of that is more spacing around him. Part of that is more creative coaches around him. Part of that is being healthy. Part of that is also Embiid just stepping up to the moment and recognizing what's going on. So I think 3 of those 4 that I talked about were all pretty confident. I think they have more shooting around him. I think they have better coaching around him. Right now, at least, he's healthier. We always say that a lot of the injuries seem to be freak injuries at the end of the first round, so we'll see how that goes. But right now, he seems pretty healthy. So the question comes down to Joe, which is why when Kyle brought it up, that is the number one thing that you're watching.
And I will say, too, one way you can offset it is by having more shot creation. That is, I know we've talked quite a bit about Kelly Oubre and whether he's playmaking or whether he's not looking for teammates at all. One of the only benefits of being a, quote unquote black hole type of isolation scorer would be if you're not passing, you're probably not turning the ball.
Yeah, no, he does.
over.
Kelly does not turn the ball
so
over.
You're at least going to get a shot off. And so that's part of why shot creation's at a premium, right? Like generally, if you're someone who can create separation from the opponent and get away, you're going to hold on to the ball and you're going to get a shot. It might not be the best shot, but you can't let perfect be the enemy of good in the playoffs.
Kelly loves that motto.
He lives that motto.
He might be worse than Embiid because he's driving from the perimeter into 4 defenders.
Yes.
And you see like, hey, spray the ball over there or drop it off here. And he's like, no, I'm gonna cuff it like a football and go through everybody and try to get the shot.
He really does
up.
have some like running back moments that I
100%.
Really enjoy.
Yeah. And but the thing of that is, as you bring him up, I was just thinking, we haven't seen him in the playoffs in a while.
Kelly?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he doesn't play on good teams. It's not
and Charlotte did it when they went into the play-in, I think it was. He was on that Charlotte team. But we haven't seen it. So I can't wait to see playoff Kelly Oubre.
That's a scary sentence.
Oh, boy. Kelly,
I can't wait
Kelly
to see
Oubre.
playoff Kelly Oubre.
It could go 2 different ways, man.
It will probably go both ways, yeah, depending on what quarter it is. But that's the fun. That's why, look, that's the whole season we gear up for the playoffs, right? Like I love the ebb and the flow of 82 games and dealing with injuries and lineup combinations and the MVP races and what have you. But these guys will all tell you it's a different sport. It is a different game when the playoffs come. And so whether it's Kelly, whether it's Tyrese and what we've been talking about for weeks, that he's going to be the undisputed perimeter alpha on this team. There are just so many things, so many storylines that we've been talking about for months and months. And now it's showtime. You can't hide anymore. Now we see, is Tyrese the guy? Can Joel be good enough in the playoffs? Like all this stuff. Can Nick Nurse be the difference maker over Doc Rivers, who by the time we got to the playoffs was kind of out of ideas? I'm very excited to see all of this stuff, even if, and I hope this doesn't happen, but even if it comes crashing down, because we're at least learning something. We're getting to see what we've all been talking about, hoping for, debating for the last 7 months. Or
they need to get these 2 games over with so we can get to the playoffs, because
I'm finally feeling it. I'm like, come on, finish line's here.
Yeah. And I have 2 questions before we get out of here. Lineup questions, because Coach Lowell Ricketts brings up both of them. He mentioned inserting Melton back into the starting lineup over Kyle Lowry.
Yeah. I don't think you can do it. If Melton was healthy and you were confident in him, I think you would.
If he had been healthy a few weeks ago,
yes,
I think, yeah. But so I mentioned it briefly on the show last night. Nurse got asked about whether he views D'Anthony as a starter. He's going to be back in the starting lineup. And essentially what Nurse said was, well, starters kind of have to play between like 20 to 30 minutes, and D'Anthony is just not capable of that right now. And so that, until D'Anthony has the legs and the lungs and they trust his body enough to play a bigger workload, I don't think it's up for consideration. And I think it's going to be a real debate because, 1, what they have had works. And 2, I think if you bring D'Anthony off the bench, it does allow you to maybe say, sayonara campaign. We don't need to see you in the playoff rotation. And as much as he's been a pleasant surprise at times for this team, I think the shelf life on campaign is about
defensively. He would be a disaster in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And the other thing, Kyle brought up the minutes. Can he play enough minutes to be a starter? Well, also to be a starter, you have to be like confident he's going to play in the next game too. It's real hard to change your starting lineup each and every game in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I don't know if and look, we all said that we thought D'Anthony looked good physically last night, but none of us truly know if he's going to be playing on Friday, because that's just the nature of the back injury. That's the nature of his season. He came back after a month off, played 3 games, and missed another month and a half. You just don't know. And I think in order to start him, A, he would have to be less rusty than he currently is. B, he would have to be able to play more minutes than he currently is able to. And C, you have to have more confidence that he's going to be here on the next game as well. None of those are true right now. If that changes at any point, we can have this conversation, but that's putting the cart way before the horse, considering how unavailable he has been for most of the second half
The
of
last
the
piece
season.
of that, and then I'll get to the final one, is that when we discussed the Kyle Lowry addition, we all discussed in the best case scenario, of course, he'll be playing 15, 20 minutes in the postseason. Now we're looking at, as Nick Nurse said last night, the starter's going to play 20 to 30 minutes.
Well,
Kyle Lowry's playing 25 to 30 minutes. You can book it now.
See, I think that could be treacherous. Like, I think that could be concerning too. Like, I think you can overwork Kyle, especially in when you're going up against
But that's
some of
why
these teams.
even Melton coming off the bench helps that, because if he's playing well, you can play that moment where you can cut back a little bit, where you're not overtaxing Lowry in that particular game.
It's just a very delicate balance right now.
100%.
No problem with Kyle starting. I'm just not necessarily ready to give him 30 minutes guaranteed.
I'm just not guaranteed, but just going off of what Kyle said, Nurse mentioned last night of you're going to play 20 to 30. All right, 20, 30, and maybe if Melton is good, he can give you another 20. And, of course, Buddy Hield plays a big piece in that too. The final one is, because you talk about this a lot with the Reed and Joel minutes together, where we don't see a lot, but when we do, we point it out. Have you seen enough where we've seen it a little bit since Joel's been back? Have you seen enough where you might want to see that depending on matchups in the postseason?
No.
Okay. Coach Lowe asking. Coach Lowe.
No, look, and there's two reasons. One, have we seen enough where I have bought into that as being a playoff lineup? No, because we've only seen it, maybe like 10 minutes all season. Like, that's not enough to change your opinion on anything.
And 10 minutes against like bad teams.
Yeah. And also my fundamental concern is that if you give a good team and a good defense a non-shooter next to Embiid, and I know Paul's had like a little mid-range thing here and there, a little baseline thing, but you want as much spacing around Embiid as you can get. If you get a good team a chance to tee off against that, I think that will make Joe's life hell. And we just talked about how Joe, when pressured, can turn the ball over. I think you need spacing around Embiid.
And you have enough of both Harris and Batum can play the four. We've seen enough minutes of them together where that works.
But
either one of them on the floor at the four next to Embiid.
Just never been a big proponent of a too big lineup. That's maybe one of the biases I have, is that I want as much shooting and ball handling and decision making and passing on the floor as possible. I understand not everybody agrees with that, but it would not be where my head would go.
I would feel better about it if Paul was either a more explosive athlete or he could shoot, one or the other. Like, if I thought, because he's not for example, when Boston played it last year, he's not Robert Williams, right? Like, he's not, I get that he could be a weak side rim protector and all that, but
he's not altering shots like that.
Not the same level of defensive altering at the rim. And certainly on the other end of the floor, he's not the vertical threat on lobs and out of the dunker spot and what have you that a guy like Robert Williams is. And he's also not spacing the floor. So if I bought the shot, if Paul had shown real progress there, and granted, I do think as a mid-range shooter, we've seen a lot more from Paul this year, partially because he's been empowered to take those shots. Yeah. But we heard coming out of camp, like, oh, Paul's going to be shooting threes. And we're still at a point, even though he's connected on a decent amount of them at this point, we're still at a point where it's like, oh God, he's going to shoot one of those again. So yeah, like maybe in a very limited, you're just throwing something out there to confuse the other team type of look. But I don't think you're going into the playoffs thinking this is going to be a real part of the rotation.
And look, I know obviously Embiid's been out for a while, but I think if Nick Nurse's head was going towards, I want to play this a lot in the playoffs, you probably would have seen more of it in November, December, January, when you had a chance to try it out. Throwing it in a couple games here at the end, I agree, it's probably not likely.
Yeah. All right. Let's say goodbye to folks. We'll be back tomorrow at 2:30.
Coach Lowe Ricketts said, Derek's shooting down all my ideas. I'm now rooting for him to eat a shoe again.
That's right. He did stick up for me last night. Was concerned about my health. Said he hopes it doesn't happen. I love you, Coach. I'm not a huge, too big fan.
He's so pissed off he didn't even pay for that one. He just chatted it. All right, let's say goodbye to the folks. We'll be back at 2:30 tomorrow. Of course, we'll have post game on Friday, but a Thursday edition here with the gang.
Couple of
daytime shows
the days
of the week correct.
I did.
See, look,
that's growth.
Like I said, next we'll count from 1 to 100, and I'll get cookies afterwards.
You're asking a lot.
Thank you, everybody who came and hang out with us during the day today. Dave Doer, Phil W., who's still found a way to complain, even though we
What up,
barely
Phil?
talked about Kelly Oubre today. Phil, at least you are consistent. I will give you that. We still love you, buddy. Coach Lowell Ricketts.
Coach.
Hashtag Team Shoe. Rick Morse. Phi Chi. Barbara Carroll. Aaron. Our
Aaron,
guy. Al, the 2-minute
Al?
warning. Nicholas Kennedy. Corey Morris. Rick Morse. Let's see.
What up, Rick?
We got Jay. I saw Kane in here. Elaine Bruno. Front running. Fan base. The Truth. Is that Paul Pierce or is that Beanie Siegel? It's hard to say. Neil Deaver.
We're not shouting out Paul Pierce.
All right, we'll certainly shout out Beanie Siegel, though.
For sure.
Gracie, Jeff Tezos, maybe Tezos. I'm not exactly sure. Derek Bodner. Who the hell is that guy? Keith.
What up, Keith?
Just the letter A, who's saying there's beta energy in this live chat. Beta energy to make that comment, my friend. Brian Knight, Ethan Pano. I think that's probably about it for today. Chris B., who's got the variety pack of Olipop on the way.
That's right.
The rest of you go and get yours.
What up, Jay?
If you have not already, hit the subscribe button and hit the bell icon so you get notifications each and every time we go live. If you hit the thumbs up button, maybe Phil W. will be happy with us during tomorrow's
won't
show.
happen.
But I won't make promises that I can't keep.
He says he'll catch the replay. He didn't hear the Kelly Oubre conversation. We just did it.
I was going to say, you heard all there was to say about Kelly. Not a whole lot of Kelly today in general. But
What's up, Barb?
we still love you, Phil W., I promise. Good to see everybody. As Devon said, we will be back tomorrow, Thursday, for an afternoon show at 2:30. Then a couple of game shows this weekend. We'll see you later.
Thanks, Bree.
We all silly like the mayor.